And happy Saturday and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, April 3rd, 2021. And we're glad that you decided to come and spend some time with us today. Obviously, there's a lot in the news, a lot going on. As we were preparing on Friday, there was news of a Capitol police officer being killed. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the trial of Derek Chauvin and the murder of George Floyd. We're going to talk about uh, Texas trying to double down and do worse than Georgia on voter suppression and a whole bunch more. But as always, we have a expert here to talk with us, and that is Val Atkinson. Val, welcome back to the deal.
Thank you. Ed. Good. Glad to be here.
Well, Val, let's jump right on in. I mean, like I said, as we were preparing for the show, we talked on Friday. Another incident at the Capitol. This time, it doesn't appear to be related to terrorism or anything like that. But before we jump to that, we're going to play a video from the Capitol Police.
Everyone. My name is Acting Chief Yogananda Pittman for the United States Capitol Police. It is with a heavy heart that I come here this afternoon to shed some light on the incident that occurred at the United States Capitol. The suspect rammed his car into two of our officers and then hit the north barricade barrier. At such time, the suspect exited the vehicle with a knife in hand. Our officers then engaged that suspect. He did not respond to verbal commands. The suspect did start lunging toward U.S. Capitol Police officers, at which time U.S. Capitol Police officers fired upon the suspect.
So Val, the acting chief of the Capitol Police, had to again come in front of the folks and talk about the death of another police officer there. Tell me real quick what you know so far, what we know so far, and I know the Republicans have made a lot of hay about all the extra security at the Capitol. It seems like it worked in this case, but what do you know about what's going on so far?
So far, it appears that Nancy Pelosi was correct, that the security was needed. General Honore, his assessment of the Capitol's weakness and what was needed was timely. And it appeared that we had a person, I don't want to call him deranged yet, because evaluations have not been made, but he decided to run his automobile into two Capitol police personnel. And eventually, one of them died. He exited the car, the perpetrator, wielding a knife. He did not obey commands to put the knife down, and he was fired upon by police. And of course, he was killed in the process. Now, what we don't know at this particular point is what his motives were, why he did it, who he's affiliated with, if anybody, what his mental health state happened to be. We know that the security put up by Honore and his people worked. Mm-hmm. And we're glad that Pelosi did not listen to her distractors who were trying to tell her that we didn't need that type of security anymore. We needed to get back to normal. So hats off to Pelosi and Honore.
Yeah, definitely. And you can see in the background in the video that we played that there's still National Guard personnel there at the Capitol. But, Val, we've both lived in Washington, D.C., and I know as a youngster, being able to run up and down, Pennsylvania Avenue, to be able to freely walk into the Capitol Rotunda and stuff like that. We're way past that now, right? We'll never be able to do those kind of things before, like we did before. But let's talk about 1-6 in context of this. Again, like you said, we had to increase security, so on and so forth. This was one person, by all counts, a black person, an adherent of the Nation of Islam. He should not have gotten out of the car. He should not have run over the officer, but he was shot dead. The folks at 1-6, a lot of them are still walking around. Are we any closer to indictments, trials, people going to jail, serious jail time? The lady that stole Nancy Pelosi's laptop still walking around because her mom said she, would be okay to come home. What's the difference here? I'm not trying to make a direct, relationship to this person because I don't know, like you said, what his motives were, whether or not he had some mental health issues or whatever. But the fact is, these other people tried to foment an insurrection and overthrow the government, and they don't seem to get the same treatment. What is that about?
Well, it appears, Ed, that there are two different type people here. We had, on the one hand, some people with American flags, symbols of the cross. They even had Confederate flags. Some of them had Nazi flags. And the Don't Tread on Me, the new symbol of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and that sort of thing. They had all of these types of flags, but they were the good guys. They were the good guys because they had the American flag. They were white, and they were mostly male, and they appeared to be patriots. So these were the good guys. Didn't turn out that way, did it? So we've got to change our whole narrative, our whole outlook, our whole approach to who good people are and who they are not. We've got to adhere to the law. The law tells us who good people are or not, instead of us making some decision haphazardly based on the color of somebody's skin. So you're right, Ed. The 1-6 was totally different. 1-6 was totally different than if it would have been a demonstration by Black Lives Matter or some other progressive leaning group.
Yeah.
So let's put that away and say we know that some of these officers took selfies with the demonstrators and those kinds of things. We know why they didn't want to call in the National Guard, while the Army, the Pentagon, drug their feet on this thing early on when they were asked to provide that. We know now why. And that needs to be an area of focus when we start coming up with solutions and remedies for what happened on 1-6. That needs to be a real area of focus, talking about the color of the skin of the perpetrators need not matter in enforcing the law.
No, it should not matter in enforcing law. And we're going to talk about the law in a little bit in relation to the case against Derek Chauvin, but I want to hold off on that because as we were talking here, I was thinking, we're still not at the 100-day mark for Joe Biden's presidency. We know that more people are getting vaccinated. The stimulus was passed and so on and so forth. And we're making headway on a lot of things. Where are we in terms of Joe Biden and what his approval is and whether or not you think that he's hitting the marks like he should? What's missing here? He's done the one press conference, and of course they made a lot of deal about him not doing one, and then he does one, so they shift gears and then they start talking about the border crisis as it is, 18,000 kids, which is a lot, but it's not like hundreds of thousands or anything like that. Can you give Joe Biden a grade so far? What would you do in terms of giving Joe Biden a grade? And then I want you to grade Congress, the Democratic Congress.
I give Joe Biden right now a minus. And the only reason I don't give him a straight A or an A plus is simply because he's still trying to hold out hope that we don't have to get rid of the filibuster altogether. And I think he needs to go full-fledged balls to the walls and go ahead and say, we need to change that law. We need to change the rule about cloture so that we can pass his agenda. His agenda is great. It's a wonderful piece of planning and strategizing to get people back to work, to make amends for police brutality and social justice, and to do all of the right things that need to be done that wasn't done in the last 4 years. It's wonderful, but you can't do any of that as long as the Senate minority, which are the Republicans, can stop up everything just by one person saying, I don't agree.
Yeah. Yeah, that I'm still worried about Joe Manchin, but I don't want to get worked up. I just don't need to get worked up. On the same note, Biden introduced infrastructure plan, $2 trillion infrastructure plan. So a lot of money is going to get spent, and where this money is supposed to come from is raising corporate tax back to 28%, from the number that was reduced down to, I think, around 22% under Trump's plan. Does infrastructure have a life? Is this going to be like the reconciliation we had to get the COVID relief, where it's going to be 50 Democrats and Kamala that bring us over the top here? Because your buddy Mitch McConnell made an appearance this week and said that no Republican is going to support any infrastructure, when week after week under the Trump administration, they had infrastructure week. 50 times during the Trump administration. What is this infrastructure plan, and is there any hope for that?
Yeah, well, the reconciliation piece really talks about any bill that has in it spending or revenue or dealing with the debt. And when you're talking about infrastructure, it deals with all three almost, maybe not revenue, but definitely spending. And it definitely affects the debt. And it could be dealing with revenue when you're talking about where you're going to get the money from. You're going to get it from the one percenters, I call them, because it's going to come from people who are making north of $400,000 a year. And most of the people I know don't make $400,000 a year. So it reaches all three categories for reconciliation: spending, revenue, and debt. And so they can use that. But you see, again, the reason I give Joe Biden an A- is because he doesn't want that. What he really wants is to convince 7 or 8 or 10 Republicans to go along with him and have a bipartisan compromise. And I want to tell him so bad, Mr. President, I love you, I support you, but the day of bipartisan compromise is over. Let it die. R.I.P. Rest in peace. Let it go.
Well, I can tell you right now, it ain't going to happen. Like I said, Mitch McConnell, who's made fewer and fewer appearances, but when he does, is to ensure that he's going to say no to something. And he did that this week. He made an appearance saying no. Before we go to the break, I guess there's one other thing I want to talk about that related to Congress, in the hypocrisy of the Republicans. One of the members in the House who is a staunch Donald Trump supporter, Matt Gaetz from Florida, seems to be in a little bit of hot water. And he did an interview with Tucker Carlson. Let's look at a little bit of that.
That Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz is under federal investigation for playing some role in sex trafficking and potentially having a relationship with a 17. Matt Gaetz interview, that was one of the weirdest interviews I've ever conducted. That story just appeared.
So Val, even Tucker Carlson thinks Matt Gaetz is bananas, which is a lot to say. Tucker Carlson is not wrapped very tight either. And Matt Gaetz had been the darling of people like Tucker Carlson. He had made numerous appearances on Fox and actually had been saying that he was being considered for a job at Fox. But he has a bit of a problem with younger girls. In this case, a 17-year-old that he took across state lines, according to the reports that I read. And he tried to go on Tucker Carlson tonight and make this about his father and somebody extorting them for $25 million. It was a really convoluted story. And even Tucker Carlson didn't buy it. Is Matt Gaetz dead in the water here? Is his political career over?
I'll tell you what, if it's not Ed, I'll tell you, I'm going to buy me some watermelon seeds because I'm going to get rich selling watermelon to some of the people up in Massachusetts. But it's clear. The guy, he's got too many problems for the Republicans to be holding on to. They got too many problems. And even if they let him go, he's not going to be replaced by a Democrat. He's going to be replaced by another Republican. And so it's not an issue. So they don't need that weight hanging around their neck. I mean, it's not like his name is McConnell or one of the other stellar people in the Republican Party. So I think he's toast. I think he'll have to go.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm just waiting for the pictures of Lindsey Graham. I don't know where those are. I guess the people at the Inquirer are holding on to those because I mean, Gaetz and Graham were the most vociferous supporters of President Trump, and now one of them's going down. I hope the other one would go down. You know what? This is exactly a time for us to take a break. So let's take a break. When we come back, Val, we got some really somber stuff to talk about. I want to talk about the trial of Derek Chauvin and going on in Minneapolis. There's a whole bunch of issues around that. And I want you to get me straight on that. I've been yelling at the TV all week. So see if you can calm me down. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Deal. Welcome back to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, April the 3rd, 2021. I just thought about my birthday is coming up, Val. So you can send money. It doesn't matter. On April 7th. And I've already had my AARP card, so I don't have to wait on that. So that's good. But I'm still alive and kicking. I've gotten my vaccine, Val. You've gotten your vaccine. I use my discounts for AARP now. I'm not ashamed. So, folks, I'm just happy to still be around, but Val, I've just been really torn this week. I've been looking at the trial of Derek Chauvin out of one eye. And trying to concentrate on work and life and all that other stuff and not be mad and yell at the TV and that kind of thing. And one of the things that was interesting in the trial this week was an approach that the prosecution took. And the best way to do this is to show the video. So let's watch the video. This is one of the prosecutors bringing up George Floyd's drug use.
Something that you saw yourself and were aware of.
Yes.
And I have to ask the same question of you. Did you struggle using during that entire period?
Yes.
And were there times when you would use together?
Yes.
And for what you saw Mr. Floyd using, what form of opioids did he typically use?
Oxycontin or oxycodone, and any kind of oxy.
And how did he get that? How did he use it?
Swallow them.
And so in pill form?
Yes. Sorry.
That's right. Not the easiest question.
So, Val, clearly the prosecutor thinks that he can introduce this now, have George Floyd's girlfriend talk about it openly about their struggles with drug abuse, in this case, oxy, which a lot of people seem to get on, and that they need to put it on the table now. What did you make of that strategy of them being so open about it and allowing her to testify about that?
Well, I listened to a lot of talk shows during the week, just as you do, Ed. And Laura Coates, who is a contributor with CNN, she is also a former U.S. attorney. And she talked about it from the standpoint of a legal strategy of introducing something that you know is going to come up later. You introduce it to take the wind out of the sail there, so that it doesn't appear to be something new that the defense brings up and get a, oh my God, type of reaction. So you want to bring it up now. It's like getting your flu shot or getting some other kind of inoculation. You give them a little bit of it so that when the hard piece hits you, it doesn't take you down. So that was the strategy, is to give them a little bit of that, take the wind out of the sails of the defense when they do bring it up themselves. I disagree with that strategy. I don't think you needed to go into it in that type of detail. I think that's something that should have rested in the opening remarks. And you should have told them, now the defense is going to tell you about drug use, and they're going to try to tell you this, that, and the other. And they're going to bring up this and his girlfriend that had nothing to do with. I mean, just lay it out and kill it right there in your opening strategy, as opposed to bringing a witness's on his girlfriend, that they use oxycodone together and they got it from nefarious sources from time to time. I don't think they needed to go into that kind of detail, because you're opening up the door to make this a case about, well, was Chauvin wrong in handling him this way? And you say, well, did Chauvin know about his drug use? Well, was he wrong in holding him down if in fact he was under the influence of drugs at that time? How do we know? He wasn't under the influence then. We know he's been under the influence. You're opening up all of that to be discussed.
Yeah.
And all you need is one juror that says, I'm not convinced.
Well, that's an interesting point, Val, because I thought at the beginning of the trial, right after the opening statement, and when the prosecution started putting on the witness, they had some really strong witnesses. They had the mixed martial artist who talked about what that's like. They had a first responder. They had a firefighter who demanded that they check his pulse. They had all manner of folk that understood that what they were seeing was not right and should have been dealt with in a different way. But when you come back and you put the girlfriend on the stand and like you said, talk about the drug use or whatever that may have tainted all that goodwill you may have gotten from those other witnesses. So, as the trial moved along on Friday, one of the, or actually on, I guess this was on Thursday, some of those first responders took the stand. And let's take a look at one of the EMTs who was on the stand. We'll take a look at that and talk about it.
We're pulling up to the scene, saw multiple officers on the side of the road with our patient lying on the ground next to a squad car.
Was, or what the condition of the patient was at that moment?
No, there were multiple officers on top of the patient when we pulled up at that point, but from what I could see where I was at, I didn't see any breathing or movement or anything like that.
Did he appear to be unresponsive to you at that point in time?
From what I could tell, just standing from a distance, yes.
So, Val, this EMT says that they came upon the scene. George Floyd clearly wasn't moving anymore. Chauvin still has his knee on George Floyd's neck. And it took a little bit for them to be able to start, performing any kind of resuscitative efforts. And clearly, as you watch the video, Chauvin seems completely dispassionate. I mean, the level of cruelty that it took to do that, especially when it was clear that he wasn't moving, wasn't struggling, whatever. What about those first responder testimonies? The firefighter, this gentleman we just saw now who came to the scene, who was driving the ambulance. Do those mitigate any at all for that, the story about his drug use and that kind of thing?
I'm not sure if it does, Ed, because I personally didn't see the value that the defense obviously thought was there in having the first responders talk. What the first responders did, in my opinion, is validate what some of the eyewitnesses were saying. It was horrible treatment. He wasn't resisting anything. He was lifeless. He looked like he was already dead. And first responders come and say, hey, there was no pulse. And to me, he was dead. And we tried to bring him back once we got him inside of the vehicle and couldn't do it. But he was dead, laying on the street for some time. So by itself, it may have been more valuable than it is now, because you already had eyewitnesses that were not only eyewitnesses. That's what makes this case so strong, Ed. Not only eyewitnesses, but our eyewitness who filmed it. I mean, if you have a murder case where somebody saw you doing it and was willing to testify against you, and not only that, they had film of you doing it, that's a hard case to break, unless you're a police officer.
Yeah. Speaking of all the video here, it's incredible the amount of video that's been shown, the body cam video and all that. And in a lot of jurisdictions, and even in North Carolina, they make it hard for you to show police video. But Minneapolis has been freely showing this video, the state of Minnesota. A lot of it's very visceral. The one that stands out to me, Val, is when they get on the scene, and as soon as they approach George Floyd in the car, the first thing they do is pull a gun and put a gun in his face. I was struck by how quick they moved from there may be a fake $20 bill, which apparently in Minnesota you get a ticket for. And then you're asked to appear in court, that it could have been a ticket. But the first thing they did was pull a gun and point a gun in his face. I mean, I know we've talked about it a lot here about policing and the need for police reform or whatever. What does that tell you about the Minneapolis police and how they treated, the people in their community to you when you see them pulling the gun as soon as they pull up on George Floyd?
Well, it's not just the Minneapolis police, as we've talked about, Ed. It's policing throughout America. because you have to understand that when police, whether it's Waycross, Georgia, or jump off Mississippi, it doesn't matter. When they pull up on the scene, they are taught the first thing you do is take control of the scene. Make sure all of the people there know that you are in charge. And some officers do that one way, some another. They raise their voices. They put their hands on their gun. They want to make sure you know that they may have a K9 with them, if that's the case. If not, they do several things to take control of the situation and intimidate you and make sure you give them the respect that they think they deserve. And if it means pulling a gun and sticking it in your face because you don't look like you're the type that happens to be in awe of his badge and uniform, maybe this gun will teach you to do that. So these are all of the motivations of police officers to get you to swallow your pride, to take a step back and let this guy be king for a day and you be his servant, whatever, his serf. And that's the way they want it. And if you don't do that, you got some problems from them, because that's the first thing they want. They want absolute control over you and your body. And you're either going to give it to them or they're going to make you wish you would have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. You're watching The Deal. That's Val Atkinson. I'm Ed Clark. We're talking about the trial of Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You know, Val, again, the tremendous amount of video that's been in here, just the horrific scenes of what went on, hearing George Floyd cry out for help, hearing the people around the scene, trying to coax the police to be more humane. And then the defense, though, they have tried to introduce that George Floyd maybe died from some other reason. I know they tried the tactic that maybe it was a hostile scene and that they should have been afraid of the crowd. But when you looked at the crowd, there was a 61-year-old man, a mixed martial artist guy who was in shorts and never got off the sidewalk, the first responder, a 9-year-old girl, and a 17-year-old girl. That was the crowd that they supposedly would have been in fear of and caused them to have to do this to George Floyd. There's one other piece of video I want you to look at real quick. This is Lieutenant Zimmerman. He's the highest ranking person that's in the police department that testified to this point. There will be other people who will testify. I think the police chief is even scheduled to testify. Let's look at Lieutenant Zimmerman real quick.
Police department been trained to kneel on the neck of someone who is handcuffed behind their back in a prone position?
No, I haven't.
Is that, if that were done, would that be considered force?
Absolutely.
What level of force might that be?
That would be the top tier, the deadly force.
Why?
Because of the fact that if your knee is on a person's neck, that can kill them.
So Val, Lieutenant Zimmerman says that putting your knee on someone's neck rises to the level of deadly force because it can kill somebody. So we talked about the other witnesses and the value of the girlfriend. We talked about whether or not the first responders had any value. And then, of course, the bystanders. This is a police officer, highest ranking police officer besides the chief, right? At some point, the chief is going to testify, but this is a very high ranking officer who says that he thinks it was excessive force and should not have been done. How much weight does that carry?
I don't think it carries any weight at all, Ed. And I know that it may be shocking to you for me to say that. But the reason I don't think it carries any weight is because people who are reasonable and objective and fair, they're going to look at this trial and they're going to come to a conclusion that the guy's guilty, okay? So they don't need to be persuaded and they don't need to be taking that extra step. So it's not for them. And the one or two people that the defense was able to get onto that jury that may have a lot of questions and want to be on Chauvin's side anyway, you can have a foot tub full of evidence and all. It doesn't matter to them. It does. You are not going to what did my good friend George Will say? George Will says you cannot use logic to move a person off of a position that they arrived at illogically. So it doesn't matter with them. It doesn't matter with them. These guys who have decided that Mr. Chauvin should walk, there ain't a piece or there aren't pieces of evidence that you can present that they'll say, oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah, okay. We need to wake up from that thing, thinking there's a piece of evidence that we can present and everything will be fine. They will come to their senses, reasoning will prevail, and justice will flow down like mighty rivers. That it ain't gonna happen.
Well, I wish you had to talk with the prosecution team before they started, because you may have saved them some trouble. You know what? We've already got up to another break, Val. So we're going to take a break. When we come back in from the break, though, you'll see a video that I shot earlier this week. It's a really short clip from Thomas McLaurin, who's been on here, Val. He's with the George Floyd Memorial Center, which is based here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he's talking about a program that they're trying to do in Hope County, North Carolina. We're going to talk about that on the other side. So stay right there. We'll be right back after these messages.
We don't want to miss an opportunity in our community to protect ourselves, especially since our community is disproportionately affected in a negative way right now.
And we've got to encourage those in our community to realize that we've got to look forward and we've got to find ways to be much more trusting and engaging and recognize the importance of the vaccine in helping us defeat this incredible virus.
And actually, I've been dreading the little pinch of the needle. I didn't even hurt, I didn't even feel it. This is just a win-win-win. And, I would encourage everyone to take advantage of it. It doesn't take a lot of time or effort, and it doesn't even hurt.
You have a spot, get the shot. So that's what Aggies do.
My name is Thomas McLaurin. I'm president of the George Floyd Memorial Center out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm happy to be here in Hope County, Rayford, North Carolina, presenting this opportunity for this county and this area. We're presenting technology training program that we think is going to be something fantastic. After the death of George Floyd, we realized that something needed to move forward to sort of put the needle on positive instead of negative. There were a lot of protests, a lot of things that took place that were on the negative side. We know the trial is going on right now, but we still need to move forward and live in a positive era. And so that's what we're here to do, is to bring something that is going to help maybe put people in some jobs where they're needed, bring strength to an economy that is kind of shrinking. And so we feel that coming down and talking with the good people of Hope County, Rayford, North Carolina is a wonderful thing. And so we wanted to be instrumental in putting a positive spin on what has happened in such a tragic era and such a tragic time.
And welcome back to The Deal, our last segment on Saturday, April 3rd, 2021. Val Atkinson is in with me. We've been talking about a bunch of stuff, the hypocrisy of the Republicans and their shenanigans. And he gave the president a grade for his first 100 days or so. We talked about the young man who tried to, or he did run over some officers, Capitol Police, and unfortunately one has died, and the young man lost his life as well when he was shot. We've obviously talked about the George Floyd murder and Derek Chauvin's trial for that. And coming back in from the break, you saw Thomas McLaurin, who is George Floyd's first cousin and his oldest first cousin at that. Thomas is from Atlanta, Georgia. He's been on the program before. He is president of something called the George Floyd Memorial Center, which is based here in Raleigh, in the same building where we're recording this right now. And Val, I just wanted to talk about this a little bit, and we'll have Thomas to talk about the program in more detail later on. But he says that we need something positive to come out of this George Floyd thing. When I talked to him off mic on Tuesday, he was like, I haven't watched any of the trial. And not only had he not watched any trial, he said he'd only seen the video once and only part of the video, and he didn't plan on watching it. And what he decided he was going to do was to do something positive. And the positive thing is they want to train 1,000 people in Hope County, North Carolina, in technology skills like drone flying, like learning how to code, like all kind of things that some jobs you can do from home, but jobs that you can train people to do to increase their income. I was struck, Val, by the median income in Hope County is $17,900. That's just on the other side of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So if you know anything about North Carolina geography, but the largest two employers in Hope County are a chicken plant and a turkey plant. So when you get your turkey on Thanksgiving, you could almost rest assured it came from Hope County. And then when you get your chicken at one of your favorite chicken restaurants, it's assuredly from Rayford, North Carolina. So Val, this whole notion about doing something positive out of the George Floyd's death, what do you think about that program and the way Thomas is trying to approach that?
I think it's a wonderful idea. And of course, as you said earlier, you had him on the show here a couple of weeks ago. And I like his approach. I just like his demeanor, his whole positive attitude about things. He didn't say so, but I got the feeling that he had seen all he needed to see about his cousin's death and the way he was treated and what was going on. And he didn't feel like, reliving that, going back through that process over and over again. He was going to spend some good time being positive, making something good happen from this. And I take my hat off to him. I think he is spot on, doing the exact right thing. It's not that he's the only living relative of George Floyd. There are many others. George left some siblings behind and that sort of thing, and children. So I guess Thomas McLaurin decided, well, why don't I go in another direction and see if we can do some things in George's name so that we'll feel better about it, meaning the circumstances and the occurrence, and better about ourselves.
Certainly.
So I think he's right on, spot on.
Right. And it's not to be critical of the other efforts. But like I said, the idea that you're going to train 1,000 people and they won't have to pay anything for it, and they're going to get some advanced skills, and the average salary out of the skills they want to train people for is $40,000. So imagine going from $17,000 a year to a $40,000 a year job, what that could do for somebody in Hope County. And then they hope to be able to take those programs across the country and apply them in other places. So we'll have him back on to talk about that. The actual launch of the program, it's going to be on the anniversary of George Floyd's death, which is May 25th. So there will be an event in Rayford, North Carolina, to announce it. And I'm sure there'll be national media and all that kind of stuff there for that. So we'll be there for that. So Val, let's switch gears a whole bunch here. The state of Texas has decided they want to one-up Georgia. They want to suppress votes too. They don't want to get left behind. they want to be draconian, and they want to be Jim Crow, not 2.0, but 10.0. They want to not double down. They want to quadruple down on this. What's going on with this voter suppression stuff? Do we need these laws? I mean, what does Texas think they're doing? Because already Georgia is seeing repercussions from the law they passed.
Absolutely. Well, they know the first question they know the first answer to the question that they know about Ed is that the demographers have told them, and Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Stacey Abrams has shown them that they cannot win fair elections, especially national fair elections, and in some cases, statewide elections, as the demographics are trending at this time. And they're trending along racial lines. And it appears that in the future, there are going to be lots more Black and brown voters going to the polls than we have even right now. And they think that the way things are now, that we are making it too easy for people to vote, which makes their job harder, because most of these people that we're making it easy to vote for some reason don't vote for Republicans. So in order for them to win, they have to make it difficult for those people to win. Now, how ironic is that, Ed? 30, 40 years ago, Republicans would have been saying, how can we tweak some of our policies to spread out things and make our tent bigger so we can attract more Black and brown voters? What policies can we change? What new policies can we embrace to go in and bring in more Black and brown voters? Instead of saying that, they know if they try to do that, they run the risk of losing their base, because their base are white, uneducated, or lowly educated male voters. And they don't compromise. And when they see you doing something to help their enemy, as they see it, Black and brown voters, you're doing things to hurt them. So you're going to lose the support of your base if you try to enhance or broaden your tent. So that leaves one thing to do. Keep those people that normally vote against you, keep them from voting by making it more difficult for them to vote, to register and to vote. And that's what they're doing. I mean, and they're throwing so much stuff up against the wall. We used to just call it throwing shit up against the wall, okay?
Yeah.
And seeing what sticks. And that's why they add in stuff like giving water and food at the line. They know this is one of the things that's probably going to slide down the wall, or one of the pieces of low-hanging fruit that the opposition is going to grab at first. They know this kind of stuff, so they throw it at you, hoping that you leave souls to the polls alone, hoping that you leave the number of drop boxes alone, hoping that you would leave the voter ID alone. Go and grab the water bottles, because we'll give you that. We'll give you that if you want that, okay? And so they are doing all of this because there is nothing to stop them, as it was just 10 years ago, before the Shelby County v. Holder decision by the Supreme Court, which eliminated Section 4 of the Civil Rights Act, which made it null and void. It has no teeth. Prior to that, they would have had to have gone to the Fourth Circuit Court to get pre-clearance to change anything in that affected voting or registration in their state. In the entire state, they couldn't have done anything in both Texas and in Georgia. So now that Shelby v. Holder has erased the pre-clearance, the ball game is open, and they can do anything they want to do. And by the time you file your lawsuit against what they are doing, they may have gone through 2 election cycles before it gets to that can do something about it.
Yeah, and they don't give a damn.
Right, and so
the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, so the bottom line to your question is, why are they doing this? It's the only way they can win election and keep at least pretending that this is a real, just, and true democracy. They don't want to announce to the world that we are leaving democracy behind and we are becoming a fascist state, whether you like it or not. we're just letting you know, we're not going to pretend anymore that we are a democracy. This is their last gasp, Ed, at pretending to be a democracy.
Yeah, there's one other piece of tape I want to show real quick, Val. This is from the Texas legislature the other day.
And what I really see is more restrictions on voters' right to vote. And we call it suppression, call it voter integrity, election integrity. What are we trying to address with this bill?
It's to address voter fraud. It's to make sure that people aren't taking advantage, breaking the rules, and cheating.
Well, during the last presidential election, there was all type of allegations against voter fraud, that the election was stolen. Do you agree with that? I think during the last election, using the system that is in place right now, you all won the majority of the votes. The Republicans did. So you think there was fraud in that election?
So about the Democratic legislator there was asking the Republican who sponsored the Senate Bill 7 is what it's called in Texas. Didn't you guys win? So was the election a fraud?
Right.
And you guys won, which I thought was funny.
Right.
But that is a good question. So
Right.
So are all those elections in Republicans areas fraud too? I know it's a
No, it was just where the Republicans won, it was a fair election. Just where the Democrats won, it was fraud.
okay. Well, now you cleared that up, I feel much better. I wanted to play that because I thought it was funny. So before we run out of time, Val, I want to switch over to some sports real quick. There's a couple of things in sports that I think that we need to deal with. Major League Baseball is pulling the All-Star game from Atlanta, which really surprised me. Baseball is a little bit behind everybody else, but they decided to do it. And even the president commented on it when they asked Joe Biden about it. Do you think there's going to be other repercussions for Georgia in terms of sports and those big sporting events that happen in Georgia? I know that Augusta's never going to do anything about it, but what about other sports? Are there ramifications for Georgia?
There could be, and I don't want to name any specifically, but there could be, because money is driving this decision here. And no big corporation wants to get on the side that appears to be oblivious or appears to be nonchalant about this issue of voter suppression. Mm-hmm. Because, dollars hit hard and it's a long time to get your way back. So they want to get on the right side of this, talking about people like Ken Chenault over there with American Express and some of the other people at Merck who are doing the right things and getting out front. These are African-American CEOs. But then there are others, such as Jamie Dimon, who is with JP Morgan Chase, and of course, Cook, who is with Apple. They're not African-Americans, but they're getting out front. They don't want their brand tarnished by some craziness that Republicans are doing. They want all of their customers to know where they stand on this thing called democracy and voter suppression and those kinds of things. And this is going to hurt because it's a snowball rolling, Ed, and it gets to the point that you are going to be asked as a businessman, as a board member, as a chief executive, have you issued a statement saying that you abhor Texas and Georgia for their voter suppression measure? Because if you haven't done that, it tells us that it's okay with you, and we're going to stop buying your product or your service.
Yeah.
So this is going to hit hard. It's
in the pocketbook. Yeah. When you hit somebody in the pocketbook, Lord have mercy. We're zooming through all these topics, Val, and we're getting close to the end of the time here. One of the things I do want to tell people is I do want to talk about sports a little bit more, especially basketball. The basketball season is winding down. We don't have time for it today. I do want to get a Dookie back on here, Nolan Smith, who's a friend of the program, one of the assistant coaches at Duke. I put up with him, because he's a nice guy, but there's been so many changes in coaching. We know that Roy Williams is leaving North Carolina, but Shaka Smart's leaving Texas. A whole bunch of things are going on. But one of the other things I noticed, Val, is that this carousel of players too that are moving from one college to another, and how interesting that can be. So I'm gonna put a pin in that, but because I want to ask Nolan about what he thinks, because his job at Duke is to go out and recruit kids to come to Duke to play basketball. So we'll try to get him back on in the next couple of weeks and talk about that. In the meantime, like I always do, Val, I need to know from you what we need to look forward to in the next week, and tell me what else you're working on.
Well, right now, we are working on getting some legal advice on two places, Ed, on my show Connections, which airs on Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock, and to also be a legal arm for the deal when necessary. And we won't give you any names right now, but we're talking with a couple of people that hopefully we'll be able to share with you in a very few days, the next time we're on, hopefully, that will serve as our legal consultant on both the deal and Connections. Hopefully we'll be able to make that announcement to you, and I look forward to that.
And it's not because Val's in legal trouble. So let's get that straight. He has been in the past, but that's a long time ago. He cleared all that up. But on a serious note, so we are working on that, and I think it'll be something that people will appreciate, that we have a regular occurring legal consultant, and I think to answer some of these tougher questions that a lot of times we just run off their mouth about, they'll know how to answer that question. So in the meantime, though, on Sunday morning at 8 a.m. over on WFXC and WFXK, you can catch Val Atkinson on Connections. Catch that Sunday morning, Sunday, April the 4th. And then we'll be back here the following Saturday for the deal. As always, we're working on getting guests. We're working on with some folks from the School of Public Health at UNC Chapel Hill to talk about disparities in health outcomes, not only related to COVID, but in general. Like I said, we're working on getting Nolan Smith back in here, a bunch of other people. So we really do appreciate you guys, sticking with us, and the show's been growing. You've been sharing it out. Continue to do that. Go to thedealwithedclark.com and read my pieces out there. Working on one for tonight, so it'll be out on Sunday. Share that out. And in the meantime, go out and do something good for somebody. And happy Easter Sunday for those that celebrate Easter. Happy Passover for those who celebrate Passover. And we'll see you back here next Saturday. You've been watching The Deal. Thanks a lot.